Hello, this is David with songwritersmarketplace.com and the Songwriter Insights podcast. And in this tutorial, we'll be going over how you can produce your own simple musician podcast. Now, the first thing you probably have on your mind that you would want to ask is, why would I want to do a podcast? Now, this answer to that I would say would be the fact that if you're a musician, a performing musician, singer-songwriter, you want to do anything to your advantage where you can get more fan engagement. And one great way to do that is to put a podcast on your website. So now you might think, well, yeah, that sounds good, but what do I talk about with a podcast? What can I say on my podcast? What would I have to talk about that would be interesting to my fans? Well, number one, they want to know about you, the artist. They hear your songs, they like your songs, that's why they're a fan, and they would like to know more about you, your story, what you're all about. And so you can do short podcasts, for instance, of events that are happening in your daily life. You can keep up to date with your shows that you have going on around your hometown. Maybe you're going on a short tour, maybe a national tour. So you can give the specifics on that. While you're out on tour, between shows, you can tell what's happening. Little funny tidbits, what's going on the road. They would be very interested in hearing about that type of thing. Another idea is if you have a new song you're working on, you may want to just play sampling of it and put it out on your podcast. Get some feedback from your fans, see what they think about it. Anything that's going on in your life that you think might be interesting to anybody would be material that you could use on your podcast. Just use your imagination and go with that. Now, the wonderful thing about a podcast is not only can the fans listen to you on their computer, but they can also listen to your podcast on their smartphone or their iPad, any portable device that they have that can play a podcast. And you may want to subscribe your podcast also to iTunes, and there's a few other sites out there that you can subscribe to that put your podcast out there, which Stitcher Radio is one, SoundCloud, Blueberry. Now, this will increase your reach quite significantly, and it will also enable more people to find you and to listen to your podcast on their portable devices. So the next part of this tutorial will cover putting it all together. As it says in the title, it's how to produce a simple musician podcast. Now, there's nothing complicated about putting this together. We're using a plugin that is very easy, although still powerful, to put a good podcast together for you and will allow you to publish to iTunes. And all the rest of the tools that we'll be using are either very low cost or free. In fact, the only major expense you'll be putting out is the microphone. And I would recommend seriously that you get a decent microphone. So let's take a look at what we'll need. First of all, you will need a hosted WordPress website. And you'll also need, in this case, I'm recommending a Dropbox account. This is going to be where you will be putting your MP3 audio files to store them on the cloud. And you can get up to 2 gigabytes free with Dropbox. The plugin we're using is Seriously Simple Podcast. It is a free WordPress plugin, and it is very easy to use, hence the name Seriously Simple Podcast. We'll be using Audacity. This is a free audio editor and recorder. Very powerful. You can download it free right from the internet onto your computer and use it to record with and then edit all your files. Now, the microphone, which I mentioned before, you want to get a high quality microphone. The one I recommend is the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. It is a USB microphone that can also act as a XLR microphone that can be run through a mixer if you choose to go that route. But I would recommend just using it in USB mode. It is also a dynamic mic, which means it picks up sounds directly in front of it. When you're using this microphone, you want to speak close to it and directly into the front. It filters out nearly all background noise. So even if you're in a noisier environment, it will not pick up on this microphone. And when you go back to edit it in Audacity and you want to take out noises from the background or the breathing that you may pick up from the mic between your breaths while you're talking, can all be filtered out using Audacity. This microphone, you can purchase it on Amazon. Last I looked at the time of making this video tutorial, it is going between $60 to $70 depending, $59.95 up, and it is high quality for the money. I find it to be about the best microphone you can get on the market for doing a podcast. I highly recommend that. There are other microphones out there that you can try out. They're good or possibly even better if you spend more money, but you can't beat the price and quality of the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. And like I said, it's a USB. You just plug it right into the USB port of your computer and you're ready to go. And so finally, I would like to talk a little bit about getting your podcast heard. So naturally, you'll be posting it to your website. And on your website, you will have your podcast that your fans can listen to, but also post it to your social media. Now, the popular social media naturally are Facebook, Twitter, Google+, LinkedIn, and Pinterest, which I have in this slide here. And you'll want to also send out a newsletter, email, to your fans that have subscribed to your newsletter, that are on your mailing list. I have MailChimp here because that's the program I'm using. And what is good about MailChimp is it has a fantastic free registration if you're just beginning, and you can email out to a large number of fans per month at no cost. Now, if you want to have an autoresponder capability, which means you want to be able to, for instance, drip content out to your fan base and some other features that you can use with the autoresponder feature, then you'll have to subscribe to MailChimp to upgrade to a higher level. And any other program out there that you might want to use, they're all good. I'm not going to get into all the different mail programs that you can subscribe to, but there's a lot of good ones out there. I just happen to use MailChimp and recommend it because of the initial free version that you can use. But overall, it's very important that you put your podcast out on your social media, send it out to your newsletter, in addition to having it posted on your website. Okay, so now that we've gone over the different parts of the tutorial that you'll be watching, then I think we're about ready to get started. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is go to your website. And you can see I'm on my musician website demo for my demonstration purposes. And once you're at your site, go ahead and log in and then go to your dashboard. Once you're in the admin area, then you want to go down the left column to Plugins, Add New. Now, once you're in the plugins, go up to the top right, search plugins, and I want you to type in Seriously Simple Podcast, and then go ahead and hit enter. That should bring up on your top left over here, Seriously Simple Podcasting. So go ahead and click on Install. Once the plugin is installed, you'll want to go ahead and activate that plugin. Now mine is already installed. I have deactivated it temporarily, so I'll go into inactive. Here you'll see it. Go ahead and click Activate. Once that plugin is activated, go over once again to the left column and you will find toward the top here Podcast. Hover over that and then go over to the column on the right, go down to Settings, click on Settings, and we'll go quickly through the settings here. General tab, Podcast Post Types. It gives you a default post type of podcast, so more than likely you're going to leave all these blank. Don't even mess with these right now. Leave them all blank. Underneath that, it'll say include podcast in main blog. The default will have it checked. Go ahead and leave that checked. Later on, if you do have a blog on your site, you wish to not include the podcast episodes in that blog, then you can uncheck this box. Audio player locations, the default is full content. I would recommend leaving that checked. You don't want necessarily to have the player show up on your excerpts. So rather than the excerpt, leave it checked as full content, and that's where your audio player will display. The very bottom here simply states, do you want it above your content or below your content? Generally, it's better to have it at top. That's the default. So I would leave that. In fact, this whole general tab, you're safe to leave all this as is right now. Go ahead. If you did change anything, you would click Settings down here on the Save Settings, rather. The next tab, we have Feed Details. Now this, and actually the rest of these tabs will apply if you want to publish to iTunes or Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud. You have to give your RSS feed details here. If you do that, you simply will fill in the title that you wish to call your podcast, give it a subtitle, the author, which will more than likely be your name, and then it asks you for your category here. This is to pick out the niche that your podcast will fit into. As you can see, if I click on the down arrow, it has arts, business, comedy. For instance, on mine, I would probably select music, as you probably would have yours on music. So you would select music, and then under subcategory, you might want to select under arts, performing arts. Right now, I'm going to leave these on none because we are just creating a simple podcast, and I'm not going to get into all the tutorial aspects of syndicating or submitting your podcast to iTunes at this time. But if you do, you would also fill in the rest of these, which is your description summary, your cover image. Now, if you do a cover image, it has to be on iTunes. If you want it especially to be in the new and noteworthy section, you have to have good artwork that is a minimum of 1400 by 1400 pixels that must be submitted with your podcast. Then you'd put your owner name and your email address. Language is in English, copyright default. It'll select it from your website, put that in there for you. And then you would save settings. Okay. Next tab is security. Simply stated, the security tab is for if you are going to put out a feed, then you would just leave this open. If you don't want iTunes to pick it up or any other podcast player, then you would probably want to maybe use this and tick this box right here and then put in your username and a password that people must know to get in to your podcast. We're going to leave that on default, not change any of that right now. Redirection. if you change your URL address, this will redirect to the new URL if that should come up later for you. Publishing, once again, this is your external feed. Use these URLs to share and publish your podcast feed. These URLs will work with any podcasting service, including iTunes. So this first field here is if you use any third parties like FeedBurner. And if you do have a FeedBurner account, you would insert that here. I'm not going to recommend that you even use FeedBurner for what we're doing here. It'll actually display your complete feed here, which in this case would be musicianwebsite.info/feed/podcast. And yours will probably be your site/feed/podcast. Once again, leave this on default, and that will take care of the podcast settings. So the next thing we're going to do is set up your Dropbox account and download Audacity onto your website. Okay, to download Dropbox onto your computer here, you want to go to Dropbox.com, and you'll get to this page right here. And it's very cut and dry. You're just going to click on download, and you will download Dropbox onto your computer. Now, if I go down to the bottom here, it does have see all plans. When you just click on the download, it's going to give you, it'll set up an account for you, and it will be a free account, which will give you 2 gigabytes of space. And then you could also click Get Started here, as I'll show you. It's going to ask you to create an account right here. Once you create the account, then it will download the program, and you'll have Dropbox on your computer where you can start saving your files. So next we're going to go ahead and go over to Audacity. Now, to get to Audacity, you'll want to go to audacityteam.org. This address you'll see right up here, audacityteam.org. Now, once you're on the site, go ahead and ignore this information on the front page. I want you to go to the Download tab. Click on Download, and then you'll be able to select either Windows, Mac, or Linux. In this case, I will select Windows. And at the top of the page right here, the Audacity 211 installer, that's where you're going to want to click for the install. And it will bring up a box. You have chosen to open Audacity Windows version 211.exec. You want to save the file. Click on Save File, and it will download onto your system. You can now install the program from your download folder. And once you've downloaded that, you want to go back, arrow back on the page, and you need an add-on for Audacity. It doesn't come with this included, which you'll need to save MP3 files. So go ahead and click on the lame MP3 encoder link here. At the top, it'll say Windows, go to the external lame download page. You want to click there again. And this top file here is where you'll want to go ahead and click there to download the file that you need. And once again, once the file has been downloaded onto your computer, you can open up that file in your download folder and install the program. So, once you have done that and you have Audacity downloaded and installed and the lame downloaded and installed, you're all set to go. And next we'll be given a quick demonstration of how you go about recording your podcast episode in Audacity and exporting it and saving it into Dropbox. So let's get started. All right, you should have downloaded the Audacity program and installed it. And when you open it up, this is the screen that you should be seeing. Something identical or very, very close to what you're seeing on my screen right here. And what we want to do first is go up to the top right, and here you see microphone, and you want to do the drop down and make sure you select the microphone that you want to be recording with. In this case, I am using the ATR 2100 USB microphone, so I'm going to check that. And once that is set, your speakers will be set on your default computer speakers generally. So you want to check that, make sure it's not set on the microphone as speaker output. Now you also want to come over here and check your input. And right now it's set on mono on my screen. I like to set this on stereo. And then we can come over here and where this icon of the microphone is, do the drop down. And you want to click Start Monitoring. And speaking into your microphone, you can see the levels. I'm speaking right up close to my mic, and I can see that my levels are just about where I want them. You don't want them to get really high and hit the top. So you want it to be right in about that 3/4, peak up around the 12 is fine. And with all these settings now, you're about ready to record. So we would just come over. Now let's just do a quick test record here. Click the red button and start recording. This is a test 1, 2, 3. This is David testing the Audacity recorder. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we click on the stop button. Now to hear that, you just simply click on the play and start recording. This is a test 1, 2, 3. This is David testing the Audacity recorder. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we click on. Now that we have a test audio file recorded here, I want to show you how to use a couple of basic editing tools that you'll be using quite often once you start recording. First one is this end of the recording over here. It clipped off on the end, so I wouldn't necessarily want to keep that here. So what you want to do is put the cursor there and drag it to the end and highlight that area. Now here you can just hit delete on your keyboard, or you can go up here and click on the cut, the scissors icon for cut, and just take that out of there. Now on the front also, I want to take off a little of this, so I come over here and select that area, drag it to the front, and I'll hit my delete on my keyboard, take that out. Now the other edit, when you record, you'll notice when you play it back that in between your breaths as you speak, you'll hear, or you might hear some annoying smacks of your lips. You'll hear some really annoying sounds coming out of your mouth that you never noticed that you did when you start recording. So you can go between these sound signatures and highlight the area in between where you notice the sound that you don't want there. And you can hit the play button. Once you highlight, it'll just play that highlight area. And you can hear that. Now I want to take that out. So I've come up here to Effect, click on Effect, and you want to go down to Noise Removal. Click on Noise Removal and then get Noise Profile. Just click on that box. That takes a profile. Now if it's a breathing sound or something that's throughout the whole audio, not just that one section, you want to take it out, clean up the whole file. You want to come over to File, or Edit rather, I'm sorry. Select All. Once all is selected, you go back to Effect once again. Go down to Noise Removal, click, and leave all these settings the same. They're just fine as the default. And come down to OK and click OK. Now it will take out all of that background noise that it's sampled. You didn't really see it do anything there because it's such a small file. It did it really quickly. If you have a large file, it will bring up a box and it'll show it working as it's taking it out. Okay, now we can come back here. I can highlight that area once again. And let's play. Listen closely. And you hear nothing. It's cleaned up. So we come back to the front, play.
And start recording. This is a test. 1, 2, 3. This is David testing the audio.
Okay, now you get a really clean sound. I know it's hard to hear over this recording coming through my speaker from into the mic, but it's really clean. So now, if you're happy with the recording, what you want to do next is come over to File, and you want to export. Then you select an area that you'd like to export it to. I will go to my desktop, and I will put it into my musician website files, for instance. And I will name this Audacity test file. And you want to make sure that it's an MP3 file, by the way. And you click Save. Now, it'll bring up this box here that will ask you to put in all the metadata. Now, you can do that if you want to save that with your file. You want to put in the artist's name, track title, album title, everything that shows here, the year, genre, comment. For this right now, I'm just going to leave that blank, not necessary, and I'll click OK. Now, it saved that file, so I'm going to go put it off my screen and find my musician website file, open that up, and from this file, I will find Audacity test file right here. Now, what I want to do is put this into my Dropbox. So I'm going to right-click on there and send to Dropbox. Okay, it'll send that file over to my Dropbox. And so I will come over to the column here, open Dropbox up, and find the Audacity test file, which is right here. Now I want to take that and drag it up to the public folder. All right, so now you're all set to go back to your website at this point and start your first podcast. So let's go ahead and do that now. So once you get back to your website, you'll want to go into your admin area. So go ahead, if you're not logged in, log into your site and get into the back end. And click on Podcast. Once you're in Podcast, you want to add new. So the first thing that you want to do is give it a title. And for this demo purpose here, I'm just going to say Demo Podcast 1. And I will also just put in some dummy text here. And also go down and set the featured image. You should have some type of image that you would like to include with your podcast. So I will go through here and let's see, we'll just pick out this crowd scene. Set featured image. Okay. Now, as you come down, you see this is the editor area. Come down further, just like making any other post. You're going to go below the editor, and you will see podcast episode details. Audio file is the first field. You want to click on Upload File. So now you want to select files, go to your Dropbox, and we're going to find the public folder in your Dropbox. Public, here we go. And we're going to open up that, find the Audacity test file that I put in there, and we're going to open. It will load that into your WordPress, and then you come down to the bottom here and select. And there it puts the link right into your podcast plugin. So from here you can check some of your other settings, make sure everything is okay, and we want to preview and just see how this looks. There's the featured image. You have the player underneath it. It automatically adds the download file, the duration, which is 11 seconds, size 171.43K. We have down here the copy that we put in, and if you set up your author box on your website, that will display right underneath the post here. And then you want to test.
And start recording. This is a test 1, 2, 3. This is David testing the Audacity recorder. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Okay, that plays great. So there would be your first podcast. That's simple, very easy to do, and you have a great new feature on your website. So now that we know this preview looks fine, the podcast looks great, we need to go back to the episode draft and publish it. So we're going to click publish. And now that it is published and live, we need to put a link on the website navigation bar. And to do that, we're going to go down to Appearance, Menu. Once we get into menus, now we need to go down to Custom Links. And in the URL, we'll type http://musician website.info, which is my URL. You will be typing whatever your website URL is here, /podcast. And then down here in the link text, you can name this whatever you'd like. If you want to name your podcast this a custom title, like my journal or my daily activities, or whatever you want to say, I'm simply just going to put podcast in here. And now we're going to add that to the menu. And when you add anything to the menu, it always goes on to the bottom. I think I would like to drag and drop this up here under blog. So we'll get that right under blog. Then we'll go ahead and save menu. Okay. Now, when we go back to the front end, the live site, we now have podcast on our navigation bar. If you click on podcast, it will take you to the podcast archive page, and there you have it. We only have one podcast listed up right now. This is the excerpt. If you click on read more, it'll take you to the full article, or the full podcast, I should say. And you have your illustration, your player, the text, just like on the preview we saw. Once again, we'll test that it plays okay.
This is a test. 1, 2, 3. This is David testing.
And it sounds fine. Now, I would like to make mention of one final thing here regarding the navigation bar. If we backtrack here a little bit, you will see that the podcast link we put up on the nav bar here, the way that we did this was with the, on the podcast bar here, shows archive. You're going to the actual archive of the, you're going to the actual archive page of your podcast episodes. Now, if you don't like this archive showing here, for instance, if you go to blog and you click on blog and go, you'll see blog on the title. Under the podcast, because of the way it's set up, it displays archive. If you don't like the archive there and rather it have the title of whatever you call your podcast, then there's an alternate method that you can use. There's actually two methods. The plugin in the documentation shows you how you can take PHP code snippets and put into your file, and you can edit those in and change this to whatever you want it to say. But if you're one of those people that doesn't have a clue what I'm talking about when I say PHP coding, then you may not want to attempt that. There's another way you can go about this, which is described in the documentation also, and we hit upon when we were doing the settings. And I'm going to show you how to do that really quickly right now. So if we go back into the back end here, back into the admin area, we are going to go to podcast settings. And remember these podcast post types that we went over earlier in the tutorial. I've already checked the post here because I have done what I'm going to show you how to do. But you'll look at it on yours and there will be nothing checked here. You want to check the post box here and then go ahead and save settings. Now, once you've done that, you will have enabled this plugin to allow you to go in to post, as you see at the top of your sidebar here, just like making a regular blog post. So you go up to post, and then you want to come over to the right column and go to categories. Now, I have already added the category here, podcast, but if you haven't done so, then you would put the name, podcast, here, and then the slug would be the same name, podcast, or you can leave it blank. When you save, it'll automatically add it, and then you would save. When it saves, you'll have a podcast category in addition to a blog category, which I have here. Now, once you've done that, you can go back into post, add new, and put a new post in, and it will show up like a podcast episode. And I'll show you how to do that. I have already completed one, so I'm just going to go into all post. Okay, and now I will go into edit mode of the copy I did of the podcast episode we did earlier. Demo podcast 1. Now, if this is a new post, of course, this will be blank, but you would put your title in, just like you did on the episode. Put your copy here, and then off to the side column here, you'll see that we now have podcast, blog, and uncategorized under categories. You want to check podcast now. And then underneath here, you'll see that you'll have the podcast episode details under post also. And you upload your audio file the same way you did under episodes. And when you save, it'll automatically put in the duration, file size. Date recorded, you can add that yourself. One thing I haven't mentioned earlier, but if you do anything that has explicit material in it, you want to mark this to disclose that it is explicit material. And also if you want to block from iTunes. And at the bottom down here on the side column, you'll enter your featured image like I've already done here. And that you should be all set then. And go ahead and just publish. This is update for me, but it'll say publish for you. So you publish it. And once it's published, your next step would be go to Appearance in your left column here. And once again, we're going to go into Menus. This time in the menu, you'll go over here to Categories. Click the drop down, and now you'll see Blog and Podcast under here. You want to check the podcast box and add to menu. And once again, you'll see that it did put it right on the bottom. Now, I'm going to leave it on the bottom just to show you how this new podcast will work compared with the first podcast link we put in with the custom link. So I'm going to save the menu. We'll go to the front end. And now you'll see, well, the second podcast is on a second row because it ran out of room up here. We had too many listings on the bar up here. But as you'll recall, the first podcast link that we put in shows archive. Now, since we set it up to put podcast episodes now under post and put that on the menu as a category, when we click on this podcast, it now puts the title here, which will say podcast. And you have the podcast here, just like the other one. This is the excerpt. And you click on Read More. And it goes to the actual podcast episode. And there you see it looks just like the other one. And we'll click to see how it plays.
And start recording. This is the test. 1, 2, 3. This is David.
Okay, that's fine. And now keep in mind that even though it's an episode posted under post, that the RSS feed link, if it's going out to iTunes or Stitcher Radio, then that will still work just the same with the same RSS feed link that you use. But on your website, it will show up as a podcast under the post. So there's two methods of doing that, and you can choose which one you would rather use. So I'm going to go back into the menu and adjust this so we don't have two podcasts on the menu bar up here, and probably go and keep the category and put it back up here where the other custom URL link is. Okay, and there we have it. I took the custom URL link podcast out, and I put the post category in, and now when we click that, it as you see it's on podcast, and Read More goes to the actual article, and that'll do it. I hope this was really a helpful tutorial for you. You'll find that podcast would be something that you'd like to have on your site. I think it will be a great added feature to get more interaction with your fans and your readers. So have fun with it, and I hope to see you in the next tutorial when we will cover more themes and plugins that can help you improve your site and your fan interaction. So for now, this is David. Take care. See you soon.